Hi, and welcome to another edition of Capital Preview, a show where we bring important issues important to Iowa and talk to our state representatives about their viewpoints and what they're working on at Capitol Hill. This Capital Preview is brought to you by Mediacom. Our guest today is Senator Jake Chapman, Republican from Adel. Senator, good to see you this morning.
It's always a pleasure.
And thanks for coming in.
Thank you.
Well, obviously the big one is we've got till April the 19th, right? I mean, that's when the session is supposed to end, the 100-day session, correct?
That's right.
So I'd ask you to give us kind of your thumbnail sketch of whether you think that's going to happen or not, and what are the big things you think are going to happen before it's done.
Well, thank you. Yeah, I think, we have self-imposed deadlines for getting bills passed, and a lot of the policy issues have been addressed this session. Last week we were able to address school funding, which is obviously a big hurdle to overcome during a legislative session. And so I think we are on pace to be close to that date, April 19th, 18th, and 19th, that will be done. Obviously, the big issue still out there is the budget.
Yeah, so why don't you kind of go into that a little bit?
Well, for the last few years, I have been concerned and have been talking about the concern I have with the amount of spending we're doing in the state. Fiscal year 13, we had almost $1 billion surplus. That is money in the savings account after we've already filled up our economic reserve account, our rainy day funds. This is money literally sitting in the savings account. That was just a few short years ago. And here we are, fiscal year 17, looking towards 17, and we're probably estimating to be below $100 million. Despite the fact that our ag economy is not doing as well as we've done in years past, we certainly are still seeing revenue growth in this state. The problem is we have an endless appetite for spending. And so I have introduced a bill for the last couple of years that would tie our spending limitation to household income growth. We are basically outpacing what household incomes are doing almost 2 to 1 with our expenses at the state level. And that's not responsible. And so I have, in fact, it ought to be just the reverse. We ought to be spending less than what household income growth is. These are our employers. These are the people we work for. And so I have filed a bill that would say we are going to restrict our growth of government to half of what household income growth is. So, for example, if it's 3% household income growth this next year, we'd only be able to spend 1.5%. We could only grow 1.5%. Well, what that does is it increases a surplus of money. And we've seen what happens with surplus money. $1 billion almost gone. Right. And some of those things were spent on good things. Right. Don't get me wrong. Right. But this is an over-collection of tax dollars. And so what we would do with that leftover money every year, we would put it into a fund that would reduce our income tax bracket equally across all of our tax brackets. So let's say you're in the highest tax bracket, you're at 8.98%. Say we've got $500 million left over. Well, that would be applied to all tax brackets, and we could reduce your income tax by potentially 2%, 3%. Over time, this bill would eliminate income tax. And if we want a strong economy in the state of Iowa, if we want jobs to come here, we want businesses to expand and grow here, we have to look at what other states have done. What these states have done to generate over 90% of the jobs in America over the last 10 years have come from states with no income tax. And so that really needs to be a goal. It needs to be something we seriously consider, and this is one method that would accomplish that. But again, the budget proposal, look, we're coming in roughly $200 to $300 million over, spending over what our revenues are for this last year. And that's not sustainable. And so we have to begin to take measures to curb our appetite for spending. And I'm fearful that we have not taken action these last couple of years, and I don't believe we're going to take action this year. And it's putting us on this path where we're going to go over the hill here real soon, potentially next year. And we need to start taking it seriously. So those are some of the efforts and some of my thoughts on the budget.
Well, very interesting, Senator. There's that old saying that all press is good press. So I'm going to see if you feel that way about. I know there was an article recently written by Rekha Basu that addressed your issues for a hate bill. And can you tell me a little bit about that? And
Yeah, I think
how that whole thing.
Rekha Basu and I are good friends now. She's written a couple of articles in the Des Moines Register about me, but it all stems from one bill. And it was a bill introduced that dealt with transgenders being classified as a protected class under our Civil Rights Code to make it a hate crime. And those efforts should be discussed on their merit as well. But when you're in the minority party, you file amendments because really the amendment I filed was out of necessity. It was done because we have filed legislation after legislation. Bills have come over from the House, and they get stuck in a drawer, never to see the light of day, never to have a debate. And so my amendment would have classified abortion, basically, as a hate crime in the state of Iowa. And what I find remarkable about that whole event, a lot of coverage about how my efforts were offensive. I find that very intriguing that my efforts were offensive. One, for the fact that if I were describing removing cancerous tumors, no one would find that offensive. They might find it graphic, but they certainly wouldn't find it offensive. So what is it that's offensive about that? Number one, and what I find offensive is when you have 12 Senate Democrats walk out of the chamber after effort to use procedure to block me from giving my opening remarks, which is unprecedented, to give my opening remarks on my amendment. They used rules to try preventing that, and I wasn't going to allow that to happen. Look, 56 million babies since Roe v. Wade have had their voices silenced. And on the very day where we're attempting to provide them a voice, the opposition once again tried to silence their voice. And I wasn't going to allow that to happen. And when they saw that wasn't going to happen, they got up and they left. So if there is to be, I have some concerns, reservations with hate crimes in general. We ought to be punishing people for the crime that is committed, not who it's committed against, is my personal belief. But if we are to have protected classes, if we are to have hate crimes, it ought to be for those who are voiceless, who cannot physically protect themselves. And so that's why I ran the amendment I did, and I'll stand by it, and I believe in those efforts, and will continue to stand up for those folks every opportunity and every day that I have.
All right, thanks, Senator. A bill that I'm interested in, and I know that you have worked on this for a couple years, is the passage of the firework bill. So can you tell me where that's at? What your goal is going forward for that?
We've made some great progress with the fireworks bill. Last year, as you know, the House passed the fireworks bill out of that chamber. It came over to the Senate. Unfortunately, it wasn't ever called up. It is still alive this session. It's in the Ways and Means Committee, and I believe it was just assigned to a subcommittee in the Ways and Means, so that's progress. And recently, there was a poll taken by the Des Moines Register, and I believe Mediacom did it together, that showed 66% of Iowans are in support of fireworks. And I think the reason we're seeing that is because people are becoming more educated on what we're dealing with. We hear all of the stories about cherry bombs, M80s. These have been prohibited under federal law for years. We're not talking about M80s and cherry bombs. There's been a lot of advancement in safety precautions that are now taken for fireworks. And most people want to be able to utilize consumer grade, not professional grade, but consumer grade fireworks. And a large majority of the states already have that. Iowa wants to join those ranks. I'm hopeful that we will get an opportunity to vote on it, because I'm pretty confident if we get a vote, this will become law.
Senator, will they have the same kind of regulations for this bill as like Missouri does for their fireworks sale? In other words, as people buy fireworks from Missouri. Will it be the similar situation for Iowa?
I think so. Look, right now there's discussion as to what this bill should look like. I think there's potential that we may even scale it some to reduce the timeframes when these can be purchased. Those are all efforts to get more support for the bill. But yeah, I think it'd be very similar to what you see in Missouri. And it's interesting you bring up Missouri because the people that are most opposed to this bill are the fireworks stands right across the border in Missouri.
And
of course, they've got a
financial
financial obligation in there. So yeah, look, I think most Iowans want it, and I'm hopeful we can see it through.
And that's why I asked that question, Senator, is because my friends who I discussed this with sit there and try and figure out how this would work. I mean, if we'd have permanent stands in Iowa, like they have permanent stands in Missouri, or they'd be temporary stands.
Yeah.
And
as the bill is right now, it would be both. You'd have temporary stands and permanent stands. The permanent stands would be permitted to sell fireworks for a longer period of time.
Okay.
Temporary stands, we have restriction to give them only a very short window as to when they could sell those. But yeah, you would see a mixture of both.
Okay, all right. The suppressor bill, can you explain that a little bit to our audience at home and kind of give us a snapshot of what that looks like?
Yeah, oftentimes when you hear suppressor, you use the word silencer.
Right.
And I know you don't watch those Hollywood films
Right.
that James Bond
Exactly.
and those, but we're not talking about a silencer that you won't hear gunshots. This is a device that's put on the end of a barrel of a firearm. Roughly 40 other states already have these legal. They're regulated under federal law. So this bill would allow citizens of Iowa to be able to utilize suppressors. It's kind of like a muffler on a car. You can still hear it, but it reduces the sound, it reduces the recoil. A lot of avid sportsmen, competitive shooters, utilize these for competitive shooting, and we were able to get it passed both in the House and the Senate. So that is down on the governor's desk. And but I'll tell you, I'm kind of disappointed in the fact that we haven't been able to bring up some of the other pro-gun issues that have been on our radar for the last couple of years. And so hopefully moving forward, we'll get an opportunity to at least have those debates and discuss them on the floor.
Yep. All right. Quickly, because our time is running short, Senator, kind of give me a little bit in a 30-second or less thing about the presidential election year, because I think it's unique. We've never seen anything like it. So I just kind of want to.
Yeah, I'd echo those comments. I think we've never seen anything like this before. It's interesting both on the Republican side and the Democrat side, the young people coming out into the political arena. My belief is I don't think on the Republican side, I don't believe Donald Trump or Ted Cruz will get the delegates needed. And so we'll see how the convention process works out. But I don't believe right now that anyone's going to get to that magic number for the delegate count.
That's interesting. And do you think, and I know we are very short on time, but so do you think they can take it from him without causing a major?
Well, that's presuming he's going to have the most delegates going into the convention. I'm not certain that that's going to happen.
I see. All right. Very good, Senator. Thank you for coming this morning. Our guest has been Senator Jake Chapman, Republican from Adel. Thanks for joining us for another edition of Capitol.